Tonight, we're diving into a case where everyday technology became a terrifying weapon. It all started with a simple, impossible text message, and it ended with a man being erased, not just from life, but from his own digital world.
So, January 12th, 2020, a financial analyst named Daniel Foster gets this text, unsettling for sure. But the really terrifying part? It came from his own phone number. This was the very beginning of what investigators would start calling a digital haunting.
And look at how quickly this all escalated. On January 12th, that first text comes in. Just 10 days later, on the 22nd, after a series of really bizarre messages, Daniel has been manipulated into digging up his own past and walking right into a trap he would never come back from.
To really get how this happened, you have to understand the man at the center of it all. See, the victim's life wasn't just quiet, it was meticulously predictable. And that very predictability is exactly what made him the perfect target. So who was Daniel Foster? Well, by all accounts, he was a reliable family man. He had a solid routine. Left for work at 7:40 a.m., got home at 5:30 p.m., like clockwork. His life was basically an open book of patterns, and it turns out someone was studying that book very, very closely. This huge contrast between his ordinary life and what happened to him, that's the key to this whole case. After that first message, Daniel just brushed it off as some kind of technical glitch. But then, this one arrived. You missed something at work. This was different. This was personal. And just like that, a weird phone malfunction turned into a direct psychological threat. It told him the sender knew his life, knew his job, and was watching his every move. Okay, so with the fear part established, the architect of this whole thing switched tactics. The goal wasn't just to scare Daniel anymore. Now it was about actively guiding him. The messages became a trail of breadcrumbs, leading him back to a very specific place from his past. This was the message that changed everything. Daniel didn't even think he had a storage unit, or so he thought. This one text suddenly triggered a forgotten memory, a unit he'd rented years ago during a move and just never officially closed out. The bait was officially set.
This right here breaks down the killer's incredibly methodical strategy. This was not a crime of passion. It was a cold, calculated psychological operation. First, you create paranoia with that spoofed number. Second, you plant a specific seed of memory. Third, you feed his growing obsession with these vague little hints. See, the killer didn't have to physically lure Daniel at all. He just needed to create a mystery so compelling that Daniel felt he had to solve it himself.
And he did try to solve it. On January 22nd, Daniel drove to that storage unit one last time and vanished. When the police found his car, everything, his wallet, his phone, everything he needed for his normal life, was still inside. This wasn't someone who planned on leaving. This was the scene of an abduction. So the investigation begins, but right away, the police are hit with a clue that just defies all logic. They weren't just looking for a man. They were chasing his digital ghost. And that ghost, it was still active. Hours after he disappeared, Daniel's wife received this text. Here's the problem. Daniel's phone was already in a police evidence bag. It was turned off. It was sealed. This single, impossible message was proof that someone else had seized complete control of Daniel Foster's digital identity. So how did they pull that off? The technique is called SIM swapping. Basically, a criminal, if they have just enough of your personal info, can call up your mobile carrier, pretend to be you, and convince them to activate a new SIM card with your number. In that instant, your digital life, your texts, your calls, it all becomes theirs. It's exactly why things like two-factor authentication that isn't tied to your phone number are so incredibly important. This table really lays out the puzzle the investigators were trying to piece together. The SIM swap confirmed his identity was stolen, right? But his bank accounts were untouched, so the motive clearly wasn't money. Then, a resignation email gets sent from his work account. The goal here was about control and erasure, not profit. So all of these digital breadcrumbs, knowing about the storage unit, the lack of a financial motive, the incredible planning, it all started pointing back to one person, a ghost from Daniel Foster's professional past. And this timeline shows you exactly how the pieces started to connect. 3 years earlier, Daniel does a routine audit that flags some irregularities at a logistics company. 2 months later, the operations manager, a guy named Evan Mercer, resigns. His name meant absolutely nothing until police found it on a rental contract inside that very same storage unit. The past had finally crashed into the present.
So it turns out, Evan Mercer blamed Daniel for destroying his career, and for 3 long years, that resentment festered and grew into this patient, meticulous obsession. His confession made it clear, the goal was never just to kill him. It was to make Daniel experience confusion and fear, to dismantle his entire life piece by piece before finally ending it.
But here's the thing. Mercer's obsession with control, the very thing that made his plan so effective, would also be his downfall. He just couldn't resist interacting with his own crime, and that gave investigators the exact opening they needed.
This is the text Evan Mercer sent from Daniel's stolen number, and he sent it directly to the lead detective. It was just a single act of pure arrogance. By trying to control the investigation, he confirmed he was actively monitoring it in real time, which gave the police a live signal to trace.
And this is where that signal led them. Using a technique called cell tower triangulation, which basically pinpoints a phone's location by its signal strength to multiple towers, police were able to map the phone's movements. And what they found was a perfect triangle between Mercer's home, the storage facility, and a nearby warehouse district. He had a routine, a pattern, and right at the center of it all was the killer.
Evan Mercer was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. The digital haunting was finally over. The messages stopped, and Daniel Foster's number, after being used as a weapon for months, finally went silent.
When you look back, this case really reveals 2 completely different realities happening at the same time. For Daniel Foster, it was pure chaos, a random, terrifying attack coming from his own phone. But for Evan Mercer, every single text, every bit of fear he caused was a carefully calibrated step in a long-planned psychological execution. And that leaves us with a pretty chilling final thought. In a world where our jobs, our movements, our memories, they're all logged digitally, our personal histories become a kind of blueprint. And in the wrong hands, that blueprint can be weaponized against us. So what story could your digital trail tell?